Okay, let's keep going. So in operant conditioning, punishment is one of them. So if I ask you, okay, have you been spanked? Based on my experience, most students they have this experience. I won't ask you it's good or bad. They're always in psychology. They always say there's some good or bad. Psychologists support it, say this is a very good reinforcement, and you never learn it. And psychology against it will say the kids only remember the punishment. They don't remember why they've been punished. So there are always arguments about will this work or not. But let's focus on the reinforcement part. So you can punish or use a reward as to create the operant conditioning. So the punishment, you can present punishment. Say I give you the punishment until you learned, and I stop the punishment. So if you like to watch the spy movies, they tortured. That's pretty much this, right? They got the information I need. I will stop until you give me the information. Or you can use the positive enforcement. I give you the reward, and the punishment will become I don't give you the reward. And both of them work. And when we talk about the operant conditioning, okay, the Skinner, that's another person we definitely need to talk about. Skinner, his lab is behavior lab. He spends so much time with all his animals. He used rat, pigeons, cat, all kind of animals, and do the operant conditioning experiment. And he called this behavior change shaping. Like this is rat. He can teach the rat to climb the stair, another stair later, and up to the floor 1 to floor 2, right? And the rat don't have to do that, well, but they learned, okay? First, they will put the food on the first layer. So they train the rat climb the ladder into the second, to this floor, and then get the food. Then they make it more complicated. So they learned need to climb here and then climb here. So this process, behavior change, is called shaping. And in the operant conditioning, also the punishment work. So there's pretty famous experiment. They put dog or rat. They have smaller one for rat, bigger one for dog. And they put the dog here. They provide a shock, and the shock is very painful. So the dog learned they're gonna jump, right? It would avoid. Okay, but they block the door. So turn out they block the door. They put the dog there, and no matter how hard the dog struggle, and he learned, okay, he will never escape it because the door being blocked. And after 2 weeks, they put the dog here, and they actually leave the door open. And they found they provide a shock. The dog stopped struggling. He would just stand there and take the shock. What's this? It's called the learning helpless. And because they learned no matter how hard they try, and there's no way they can escape, so they stop trying. And we see a lot of examples of this. Some animals or humans, this happens. They found no matter how hard they try, and there's no way they can get out of this bad environment, and that's learning helpless. When you train the animal to do something, operant conditioning, you have a fixed ratio, you have the variable ratio. Well, which one gonna work best? Both of them gonna work. Fixed ratio is you press the bar, you got 1 foot pallet. Then you press another bar, you get another foot pallet. That's fixed ratio. Variable ratio is you press the bar and sometimes nothing. And you press the bar, you got nothing. And then you press the bar, you got 5 pallet. Which one gonna work best? If I ask you to vote, I found some students like this, others like this. But it turned out this one works best. We love surprise. So if I give it a fixed ratio, that's the animal's behavior. When I provide a variable ratio, well, actually the animal's gonna press the bar like crazy. How do you explain this? Well, human like surprise, animal like surprise. Have you wondered why people just sit there for hours, sometimes for days, and they refuse to go to the bathroom because they feel like, okay, if I leave this machine and the other person comes, the next one will be the $1 million prize and they're going to take my prize. So those are unpredictable variable, really enforce the behavior. So that's the Skinner's experiment, and you can watch his interview. Okay, the next one is called the social learning. Bandura, he's a professor in Stanford experiment. He talked about, okay, human learned. All these psychologists, well, you're pretty good. You talk about learning, but you never talk about human. Human, we're a social animal. You don't have to make every mistake, and you can watch other people's behavior and say, I don't want to be like him. That's the modeling, imitation. Like, you don't have to make every mistake. You drive on I-35, you speed up, right? They tell you, okay, speed limit is 65 miles per hour, and you always go to 75 until you see a poor car being blocked by the police, and you automatically slow down. And you smile, you look at that person and say, poor guy. Learning. You don't have to make every mistake on your own, because we're humans, we have very good brain, we can model it. And his experiment, very famous experiment, the bubble doll experiment, he put the kids into two groups and they watch the video. So in the control group, they watch a normal video, and the experimental group, they watch a video. In the video, an adult take a hammer and hit the bubble doll. And now they recruit those kids and put them into a room with toy. And they found the kids watch this video, violence video. They will take a hammer and hit the bubble doll. So that's his very famous experiment. And he used this to explain humans' behavior. So if you watch more violent movie, or you grow up in the family and they use the violence for communication, it will shape their behavior, shape their brain. And that's called the social learning. And psychologists argue why we have so many violent behavior recently. We have people grab a weapon and go to school and start to kill. Some psychologists blame because we have a lot of those violent TV show, violent movie, violent video games. And when you grow up in the environment like this, it will affect your brain. You just feel like, okay, you're doing a video game. You don't feel like you're killing people. And there's some experiment like this. It's just one. They do find people play the violent video games. Their brain behave differently. This is a functional MRI, so they measure their brain activity. Their brain behave differently compared with people don't play those violent video games. But this theory this part in human is complicated. It's not 100% established yet, so they are still studying it. And let's look at the molecular level of learning. So we mentioned this part in the nervous system. So now let's bring it back. We talk about the learning and memory. So far, what we understand, what happened in your brain. And in your brain is the neuron. It's not the number of neurons, it's the connection. As I keep telling you, it's the neural network. And so far, that's how the psychologists believe. All your memory, your self-consciousness is established between the network. And the neurotransmitter is glutamate. When learning happens, in your brain you have neurons, and they form the connection, neural network, and they release glutamate. So in the area called hippocampus, we'll talk about this area in the next topic, memory. In this area, it will turn the short-term memory into a long-term memory. So what happens is, when the long-term memory is established, you have the network. And this neural network, they release a lot of glutamate. And in this synapse, when you need to remember something, we call it retrieve your memory. And when this network, they're gonna fire, so these connections gonna cause the glutamate release, and this neural network of neurons fire a lot, and you are able to retrieve your memory. And this part, this is called the synaptic button. So this is synapse, and they are able to change. They are able to change. So it's based on the, apparently you need to have the gene process, produce protein. So because all the bodies are made of protein, so they are able to grow and connect with other neuron. So this is the image. They are able to image those dendritic spine change based on learning process. And there's a theory, so when you learned, it's associated with the increase the number of exon terminal. And in the exon part, they increase the synaptic vessel. So this, in the synapse, you have neurotransmitter. They are packed inside those vessels. And compared with non-learned with the learned one is they're going to have a lot of synapse. And those strong synapse, they have a lot of vessel with neurotransmitter. So every time when you trigger this neural network excited, not learned people, they release a little bit neurotransmitter, and the learned people, they release a lot. That's the difference between the experienced or learned with the not learned so well people. Increase the synaptic efficiency. Quickly go over that. This is my research. So after I got my PhD, I have a funding, study the learning neuroplasticity. So I did train the transgenic mice, and they have the fluorescent neuron. And through the training, they call the acrobatic task. I built this task, so they're able to, they love this task actually. And after they go through this learning, we study their brain, their dendritic spine, how they change. And this is their learning curve. So we found operant conditioning, the learning curve, and they make less and less mistake, and their latency gradually decrease. So this is a very standardized learning, indicate after 40 days, about 2 months of training, they learned. And the exciting part is this: we're able to image their synapse change week by week. So every week we image them, and we found those dynamic change. So this indicate in the brain, okay, those synapse is the synapse part. They can dissociate, resociate, and they can cause the learning behavior. It's published in 2013 Journal of Neuroscience. Okay, that's it.